Imagine the exact moment you leave home for the first time. There's the thrill of a wide-open future, but right beside it sits the heavy guilt of leaving your past behind. This tension defines Hayyim Nahman Bialik's 1902 poem, Levadi, or Alone. To understand this poem, we have to look at the tension between two environments. On the left, Jewish life centered in the Beit Midrash, the traditional study hall. It was a closed, protective world of religious devotion. But on the right, we see the Enlightenment, a secular movement promising modern culture, science, and total freedom. For young men in the yeshivas, stepping out into that new light meant abandoning the only world their families had ever known. To the traditional community, they were severing ties to Judaism. Bialik was caught in the middle, torn between the outside world and his roots. This chart shows the poem operating on two levels, a deeply personal story of leaving home and a national document of Eastern European Jewry's crisis. In their overlap, Bialik becomes a final prophet. His loneliness is the lens watching the traditional world empty out. The poem's imagery centers on three specific metaphors. First, the speaker is the soft fledgling. Second, the broken wing of the Shekinah symbolizes fading traditional strength. Finally, light and wind stand for Enlightenment forces pulling an entire generation away. We can trace the narrative across a distinct timeline. In the first three stanzas, everyone else is swept away by the light. The speaker remains behind, retreating under the broken wing to create a temporary, anxious shelter. Moving into the final three stanzas, the emotional weight crushes down. The Shekinah weeps a single tear on his shoulder, attempting to physically hold him back. But the door remains open. The separation is inevitable, breaking both their hearts. The structural core of Levadi is mapped by what we call the X model. Look at how these graph lines cross over time. This illustrates a complete psychological role reversal. Follow the yellow line, representing the speaker. He begins weak and dependent on the Shekhinah's protection, but gains the strength to stand on his own. Now look at the blue line. The divine presence, once a mighty protector, deteriorates into a fragile figure, completely dependent on the single boy who hasn't left her yet. Bialik emphasizes this tragedy using two specific motifs. First, the intense contrast between the word everyone and the repeating word alone, Levadi. As the masses disappear, his isolation becomes absolute. Second is the motif of the tear. This single drop of water holds the entire collapse of the Jewish world, forcing the reader to feel the staggering weight of the speaker's guilt. These emotional peaks rely on two core literary devices. The first is personification. The Shekinah is written not as a distant god, but as an aging, terrified mother weeping for her child. The second is anaphora. Bialik repeatedly starts phrases with and laika, uchain in Hebrew, creating a rhythm that echoes an ancient funeral dirge. Let's check your recall for the poem's references. Pause the video right here and think, when the speaker cries out, "I alone am left," which famous biblical prophet is he directly quoting? The answer is the prophet Elijah, who stood entirely alone against the prophets of Baal. Bialik weaves in other historical echoes as well. He references the binding of Isaac when describing the Shekinah weeping over her only one, framing the speaker's departure as a profound sacrifice. He even echoes the Yizkor prayer for the dead. By layering these references, Bialik elevates a personal goodbye into a solemn mourning period for an entire civilization. The poem ends on an unresolved chord. We see the speaker moving toward the open window, stepping into the light of the new world. The physical separation is complete, but the psychological conflict is not. He will forever carry the agonizing guilt of the Shekinah's tears. A complete analysis of Levadi brings together these four components: the dual conflict of the individual and the nation, the X model role reversal, the bird metaphors, and the layers of biblical history. By connecting the historical reality of the Enlightenment to the intimate grief of leaving home, you can address the major themes of this text. You have the structure. Now you are ready for the exam.